and welcome back to another episode of the Real Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jacob O'Connor. Real Conversations is a podcast for those dedicated to doing hard things and living a meaningful life. Today, I'm joined again, round two, with Derek Sorrells. How you doing, Derek?
I'm excellent.
Actually, Dr. Derek Sorrells, as you told me last time.
Well, it doesn't matter to too many people.
I often forget that you did go back and get your doctorate.
I did. The ROI is not great, but I did.
It's a couple extra letters you can put on your LinkedIn profile.
And we all know LinkedIn's the most important thing.
It is 100%. So we did our first episode, and I think that was about 2 years ago, and it actually got really good feedback around town. People were like, I was always wondering who owns those businesses, and it's all the same guy, and people were very intrigued. And then I was thinking back on, since we've opened the restaurant and everything, like this category of businesses, retail entrepreneurship, like this is not e-commerce, like this is bringing people into a physical location. There's a lease, there's all this overhead, like it is a much different segment of business than I think people know a lot about. And when I had you on the first time, that kind of was evident, but I have a new perspective and a new appreciation for it now with us having the restaurant open. And then I also realized that you've opened a handful of other concepts and locations since we last recorded. And so I figured it was due time for you to come back on.
Yeah, we've opened 4 locations in 13 months.
How's that been?
I don't recommend it. I absolutely do not recommend it. It kind of fell. It kind of fell that way. It wasn't as if that was planned, because I would never suggest anyone do anything like that, unless you're very large and have a very big staff. But it's all worked out okay.
Yeah.
Learned a lot along the way too. Yeah. So when you go from 4 to 8 very quickly, it becomes a little crazy.
You mean doubling is like a little painful?
Doubling, but also different businesses. So They're not even all the same. So that kind of hyper growth, 100% over a very short period of time can become painful, but you learn along the way too.
I can imagine. Remind everyone listening, what are your concepts and what are they?
Newest concept is Just a Sip. It's a soda shop. I've combined that with one of my other concepts, which is Papa's Ice Cream and Treats. So both of those have 3 locations. 2 of them are combos, where we commingle those. Also, Flight 1868, which is a wine and whiskey bar in Clifton Square. Sweet and Saucy, which is a candy, hot sauce, and sock store. Yes, I know those have nothing to do with each other. That's in Delano. The Arcade, I co-own that. It is in Old Town. And then Let's Go Build, which is a Lego brick store at K96 in Greenwich. I think that is everything.
That is such a wide variety of concepts.
It is. It's kind of, you just kind of fall into some of these when you're not even necessarily, I was never looking for anything. Mm-hmm. It just kind of, each one of them kind of happened for different reasons.
It was funny because I remember when you were looking at doing the Lego concept, if this is the right concept, that is, but you'd come back from like a trip in Arizona or somewhere out west a little bit, and you're like, yeah, I saw this really cool place. And so I just went and checked it out. And I was thinking, I could probably do that in Wichita, and I could probably do it cheaper and better. And then you just went and did it.
Yeah, I think, you and I have talked a lot about business before you decided to do this. And you and I talked about different concepts and different businesses and different restaurants. So anytime I find something, part of it is how easy it is to duplicate. There are many things that are, in my opinion, that are franchises that are relatively easy to duplicate. There are also things, like another broken egg, that are not something you can just open on your own and have it look as amazing as this place looks. And that's really important, because people who get into franchises do it for a specific reason. And it's just the same reason when you go to McDonald's, whether it's in New York or LA, it's always going to taste the same and look the same. But this was a business that I thought I could relatively easily replicate, given the way the business was set up, the kind of marketing they were doing at the time and things like that. So I thought, why not? I'll just do it. I signed a lease and we opened 90 days later.
90 days?
90 days.
That's absurd.
It's not my fastest, though.
What's your fastest?
Fastest was the first soda shop. We did it in 51 days.
Was that a new build, or did you take over?
Took over an existing space.
Okay.
No, a new build would be more like 5,000 days. New builds, as you know, everything takes twice as long as you think, and it's at least twice as expensive. Many times, it's very difficult. But I was lucky enough that we were able to do a lot of pre-planning with the first soda shop. So we were able to open relatively quickly.
So the Justice Sip that's in front of Dino's, was that structured there in the parking lot, or did you build that?
So the one that's in front of Dino's was a former Baskin Robbins, and the franchisee went out of business, and I was able to get that spot. And like most soda shops, which there are literally hundreds across the United States, most of them are drive-through only. So there's no inside.
Yeah.
So I went into that with that thought process. And because it had an inside area before, it became pretty much, because it's at 21st and Webb, it became the world's most expensive inside storage. And when I leased the spot at 37th and Ridge, which happens to also be across the street from the new Dino's.
Actually, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it is. They would not lease me a small spot, because most people that own strip malls, most companies that own strip malls, they want to lease a large section. And if you only need, a small, 1,500 square feet, if you're gone at some point, they're not going to be able to lease that to anyone else. So I decided, well, what am I going to do with this? And that's when I decided to co-brand with my Papa's Ice Cream and Treats and put that in there as well.
Oh, really?
And then that's the time that I decided on the East location at 21st and Webb, I'm going to do it here too.
Seriously?
Yeah. So we opened the 21st, for 21st and Webb store, November of last year, added Papa's Ice Cream and Treats on the inside in April. And then that was after opening the bar, Flight 1868 in March. In Clifton Square, and then opened the new location in September at 37th and Ridge.
I have a handful of questions for this, but a handful of questions to ask about that. But the first I'm going to ask is, like, you see that with so I think it's Yum Brands that owns Taco Bell and then KFC. So you often see them co-branded in the same space. And I saw some research on, I think they call it like the Coca-Cola model, where essentially you always wonder why you see a Coke soda machine next to a Pepsi soda machine. And because if you have just one of them there, the decision is, am I going to buy a soda? Or am I going to go buy a Coca-Cola soda? Or if you put both of them next to each other, the decision becomes, well, am I going to go buy a Coke or a Pepsi? It's no longer, am I going to buy a soda? Like, so have you seen that by putting two different concepts in the same space, have you seen sales improve, like in purchasing decisions increase? Or has it purely just been a benefit from having the same lease with two tenants, and it just kind of divides that a little bit easier for you?
I think it's a little bit of both, because you will see when families come in, you will see, the kids getting ice cream, mom and dad maybe getting a soda, or a combination of those. We will see people that'll get a soda and then they'll sit down and drink a little bit of it and then decide to get ice cream. So, we've gone through one summer at the 21st and Webb store, but the 37th and Ridge store, the brand new one, I am surprised at how big the ice cream has been already, and it just opened towards the end of September, and it's still increasing on the weekends. So it's nice to see that going on. But I think what we are going to see, that we've already seen to some degree, is it's going to push both brands up a little bit. So we're going to wind up increasing, not just at one. It's not going to cannibalize the other, but I think we're going to see both of them go up.
Yeah. Man, you're such a good spot at 37th and Ridge. That area is very, very popular in Wichita, and it's just going to continue to get bigger.
Well, I think it's one of those, there's only a couple of ways to get to the east side of town. And you can either take Kellogg, you can either take, 13th down to the 235 where it heads south, or you have to get on K96. So that 37th and Ridge area there, and there's also, there's a tremendous amount of people that live in that area. There's Emerald Bay, there's
the Avante Apartments.
The Avante Apartments that are right behind it. They're also building 10 new buildings.
Wow.
Behind, right there where Avante is. There's Avalon Park. There's all kinds of relatively high demographic people that live in that area. It's in the Mays School District, so you have many people that are moving out to that area. So we think it's a great area, and while there may be some competition as far as Brahms and Dairy Queen and things like that, there's only one place that you can get an extreme shake like we offer at Papa's, and that's the kind of thing that people want.
Yeah, I like that. So you did the co-branding. You've opened 3 Justice Sips?
There's 3 Justice Sips, 13th and Tyler, which is a standalone, and then the 2 co-branded at 21st and Webb and 37th and Ridge. Yeah.
So if we were to track this growth, like I want to kind of create a little bit of an arc, because you've sped up as time's gone on. Like, when was the first concept? I think it was the arcade, but like, what has been your progression of openings and then the rough timeline with them.
The arcade opened December 15th, 2017. So it's almost 7 years old.
Wow.
I'm still amazed at how many people don't know that we have a classic video arcade in Wichita. That just floors me. We moved into our new building, which added a full bar and kitchen May of last year, so May of 23. The candy store, Sweet and Saucy, opened in Delano in June of 19. After that was Papa's, which I signed the lease on that January 31st of 2020 and took over the building April 1st of 2020. And the world changed a lot in that 60 days.
Yes, it did.
It did. So when we took over that building, pretty much everything was closed down. Kind of laid low for a while, for a couple of years, 2.5 years. And then the Lego store happened in October of 22. And then it was a year later, October 23, was Just a Sip 1. The next month, November, was Just a Sip 2. And then the third Just a Sip was, let's see, that's the last one that just opened. It was September of this year. So we took a little bit of time off. But and then I forgot to mention, after Just a Sip 1 and Just a Sip 2, Flight 1868 opened in March of 24. So it opened this year.
Well, why do 3 Just a Sips? Like, you're trying to prove out a concept. I think it makes sense to do 1, but like you went all in and said 3 off the bat.
Well, so there's a couple of things behind that, and one of them was we wanted 1 east and we wanted 1 west. Mm-hmm. So it became, well, if we put 1 at 13th and Tyler, there was a building that was available there. One thing you don't think about when you're looking for real estate also is the right type of real estate. So the Just a Sip idea was well before the Lego store, but there were no retail spots anywhere in Wichita, Derby, Andover that had a drive-through.
Seriously?
For over 18 months. So the Lego store idea came up, let's go build, and we decided to execute that first. And then within literally 30 days, 2 drive-throughs opened up on opposite sides of town. So actually 3, but one of them would not lease to us. They didn't believe what we were doing was a viable concept.
Wow.
Which is always interesting when a building owner doesn't actually know what's going on in the world, because they could have easily gone to Google and looked and seen there were literally hundreds of them.
Yeah.
And if you're not in Wichita and you're not in Utah, which is where a lot of them are, they are literally coming everywhere. Hundreds and hundreds of franchises have been signed. So they are showing up and they are profitable. So we had one location that we wanted that we couldn't get, but that's okay. And then the location at 13th or 37th and Ridge became available. And that became, we really thought as many of the businesses are growing, and we knew Dino's was going in there. We knew this was being added on. With a Jimmy's Egg is in there. There's a Hot Works in there, and there's several other businesses. We really believed that with the Avante apartments behind it and the amount of traffic that intersection receives, we really believed that the ice cream would do very well there, because there are families that live very close, and we're closer than Maze Road to a lot of those families, and that there's nothing else in that area that can offer that kind of product. So we thought we would do very good in that area. So it was a little bit of hyper growth, which caused a little bit of a little more need for the bar.
For you,
for me personally, but it really did. It was a calculated decision that was, and there was pain along the way.
Yeah.
Because part of growth is cash flow. Because in the beginning, you don't make a lot of money and you're spending tons of it.
Right.
You have so many employees that are on payroll that, your payroll is extremely high. Your food cost is high in the beginning, everything. So growing like that quickly can become very expensive very quickly.
Yeah. How do you optimize between planning future growth and all that entails with the roadmap versus making sure that you're controlling costs and keeping your eyes on the current financials? I mean, you've got 8 businesses running right now. Like how do you do both?
I spend entirely too much time. I mean, literally before I drove over here, I was looking at today's sales at 3 different stores.
Yeah.
Looking at what sold, what percentage of discounts we gave on the products, what the mix is, because, this is a big time for our candy store. We have a lot of products, the hot sauces, the candies, the socks. They're very conducive to, easily mailing or putting in a stocking.
Yeah.
They're add-ons where, you might buy somebody a $100 present, but let's buy them a $12 pair of socks or something like that. With the Chiefs winning, Chief socks are really hot, easy to give to grandma, grandpa, cousins, brothers. So, but you look at all that because, no one's, there's that old saying, no one's going to care about your business as much as you do. And that's true, but it goes back to little things like no one's going to care about every little thing that's within the business. So an employee is not going to think of anything about throwing away a styrofoam cup. We go through hundreds of cups a day that we give out to customers at just a sip. But depending on the cup, they can cost with a lid and a straw 28 cents. And if an employee throws that away because they used it for one reason and it hasn't been given to a customer and it can just be washed and reused, then we need to do that. And it's all of those little tiny things that wind up costing you a tremendous amount of money. When you look at what a straw cost or what a napkin cost, and when you give out just a wad of napkins, or you give a customer an extra straw or something like that, which isn't a problem. Customer service is first, but you have to be careful about exactly what you're doing. And so I spend a lot of time looking at, what's our product waste? We went through something today where, our new stores are not going through as much cake and as much cheesecake on our Extreme Shakes as our main initial store. So what do? You can't just buy a cake and throw half of it away every 5 days.
Right.
So what do? So, you have to figure out how to make those things happen. And that is something that we hadn't seen because we've only had our second Papa's during the summer and it was busy. And now we opened one and they're both of our newest ones are slowing down.
Yeah.
So what do you do to keep those costs down? And that's really what we're dealing with right now.
And at the same time, how do you know when to split your time between the present and what's going on within the business versus like working on the business and growing it?
Yeah, that's something that I learned a little bit the hard way. I think the last probably 6 months, in that I spent a little bit too much time trying to come up with different things to do, different promotions. It's not about the number of promotions. It's not about having something for Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day and Memorial Day and the 4th of July. You don't have to have something new every time there's a holiday. Is it fun and does it look cool? Sure. But how much time are you spending putting together a promotion, whether that's photos, whether it's text, whether it's social media, those kind of things, for something that may only be available for an extremely short period of time.
Right.
And then the customer doesn't have that available anymore. So I've learned the hard way that, it's probably best to have 4 different major promotions a year. Do something for spring, something for summer, something for fall, something for winter, and that's all. So you've got 4 things to shoot for, 4 things to do, because, when I had 3 or 4 businesses, a couple of them were pretty much on autopilot. When you have 8, 6, 9 locations, there's too much going on. There's way too many moving parts. So you have to make sure that you're keeping the moving parts as few as possible and that you're executing flawlessly on everything that you're doing.
With how you've grown, like what does the team look like? What are the roles that are supporting you?
So I have a director of operations, and she is my right-hand man, to put it that way. She pretty much knows everything that's going on in the business, and I can be straight with her on everything. And we both realized, based on what I just said moments ago, that we need to work. It sounds ridiculous to say, but you definitely have to remember you have to work smarter, not harder. It is about what we're going to do. Is it going to move the needle? This is not a popularity contest. So by doing this, are we going to sell enough product, not only to cover the cost of what we're doing, but to move it forward?
Right.
We also have a social media person. that focuses on social media. A lot of our photos and posting on whether it's TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And then I have one store manager that covers all of the Just a Sips, and then one that covers primarily just the Papas, one Papas, and then supporting staff at the other stores. It really depends. Some stores really don't have a manager like the candy store because it's really a different model. All of the models are extremely different, which makes it challenging too. Like today is Small Business Saturday. It is extremely busy at the candy store. Extremely busy. 100, almost 200 transactions.
Oh wow!
One person can handle that because all they're really doing is ringing people up.
Yeah.
But if you go to, say, the ice cream store, each transaction can take significantly longer because if you're ordering an extreme shake, that takes much longer to do and it's much more hands-on. So I may do, you may do a few $1,000s there, but I'll have to have 3 or 4 people on a busy Saturday night in the summer. So your payroll is going to be different. They look very different. So you have to really pay attention to all that. So some stores have managers and some stores which are a little lighter as far as what needs to be done. We'll just have staff there and we won't have anybody that's really in management.
Why have you decided to take this hyper growth route instead of, you could have just stayed with your 3 locations and continue living your life?
I think it's one of those things where, I think part of being an entrepreneur is the challenge. Part of it is the excitement. It's a huge endorphin rush, which isn't always a good thing. Opening businesses should not be your drug of choice. But it's a combination of things. It's wanting to succeed. It's wanting to win, but it's also wanting to bring something to the people that they're going to love and they're going to enjoy. There was nothing better than when I'd work at the arcade. When we had our original location, it was a little bit smaller. And you still see it today, but you see families come out and it's a mom or a dad and they're talking to their kids and they're like, these are the games that I used to play when I was a kid. And it's true with the ice cream. When you've got a 6 or 7-year-old and they're sitting across from a shake that's 12 inches tall with a full slice of cake on it and enough sugar in it to keep them awake for 6 months. But there's nothing like seeing people that are really having a good time and enjoying themselves and are happy. And I think that's a lot of it is you're giving something. People want an experience. Especially young people today, they want an experience, and we want to be able to give those people experiences that they're going to love and that they're going to enjoy.
Yeah, that's what I like about the restaurant. It's a business, and I enjoy business for that component. But whenever we have a full house here, and we were just getting started our first couple of weeks, we could not handle that rush very well. And so you'd walk out here, and you just feel how tense it was, and you could see the people were unhappy, and it was like, man, like they chose to come here and spend time here, and we're providing this experience, and that's just a learning curve. But to compare that to where we are today and how busy we were this morning specifically, and people are laughing that there's beignets. There's these 2 little girls today, fingers covered in the powder sugar from the beignets and the honey marmalade is all over the table. And they were so happy on a sugar high and like just walking around, seeing everyone smiling and happy. That is such a feeling that I didn't expect. That it's been really nice.
And that's the thing too, is that, not everybody knows, unless they know you, knows that you're one of the owners and you can be in here. And that's one of the entertaining things is when you are able to come and sit down at a table in your restaurant, especially when you don't have your laptop, which is sometimes hard for me. But when you're sitting and you're just enjoying and you're eavesdropping, not eavesdropping on private conversations, but as much as it is eavesdropping on the laughter and the fun and the enjoyment, especially this time of year when people are, reconnecting with people they haven't seen in a while or family that are in town. And they're reminiscing about things. And like you said, when there's powdered sugar and honey all over the table, it's probably been a good experience.
Yes.
And that's what's great about it.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because I'm often wearing a hoodie, so there's no other broken egg branding. So I do get to kind of listen in and observe. But then as soon as I see something, I want to jump in, and I do jump in, and people kind of look at me, and I'm like, oh, they probably have no clue what's going on here. I'm like, oh, I can help you. I'm actually one of the owners, X, Y, and Z. And that's been fun, just like remembering people don't know who you are, which is a benefit, but also identify yourself if you're going to try and jump into the situation.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, and that goes back to, no one's going to care as much as you do,
Yeah.
because it's all the little things, as far as, that glass is a little more empty than it should be. We need to put another drink in there, or anything else. People appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the, difficult things about working with your staff too, is you always have to work with your staff and make sure that, your goal is to turn everyone into a stark raving fan. You want them to leave the business and say, that strawberry pound cake, it's a French toast.
Yeah. Strawberry French toast.
That strawberry pound cake French toast is just amazing. Or the apple fritter French toast is amazing too. You want people to go out and say, no, you have to go here. This isn't just eggs and omelets. This is amazing. And part of that is the food, but part of it's the experience too. And when you can get your employees to start emulating some of what you feel is as an owner, getting them to take that level of ownership, then at that point is when, those customers they'll just be in here all the time.
What have you, in your experience, learned about leadership through this process?
It's what I just said is extremely hard to do. It really is. Consistency is extremely important. I think that you have to lead by example, which is sometimes hard to do when you're not in the store all the time. But your managers need to also be leading by example. It's not a do as I say, not as I do. They need to be doing it too, and they need to show that. And just like, it's just like, in any kind of leadership situation, like with a parent and a child, with a manager and a employee, there has to be rules, and those rules have to be enforced. And that's difficult in some of the situations we're in, where, we both are in businesses where many of these people, if you fired them today, they would get a new job tomorrow, because there's no background check done. They don't care where they've worked before. If they know how to serve, they'll go get another job, because it's so difficult to get quality people, and you don't know whether they're quality or not. They interview well. So it's hard to reprimand employees when they are screwing up, but you have to do it, because the goal is it makes them a better person, and it gives the customer a better experience. And you have to do that in a way that they understand why. But I think the other side of that is you have to encourage them, and you have to give value to that. So we have a program where we have secret shoppers. And if you do everything on the list, you get money for it.
Oh, sweet.
So if you greet the customer, when they come in the door, you get $5 for that. If you have your shirt on, which you should always have your proper shirt on, and it's neat and clean, it wasn't wadded up in the backseat of the car before you came in, you get $5. If you suggestive sell, you get $5. If you don't, you lose $5. So, and everyone gets shopped. And the goal there is that we really believe that we're going to make more money by having them sell correctly. If you if you come in and order a vanilla cone, we're not going to say single or double dip. We're going to say double dip. We're not going to put the single dip in your mind. And if we sell more product, you're going to wind up with a bigger tip. And at the same time, the customer may do something they haven't done before. They may try another dip of another flavor that they weren't even thinking of doing, but now you've put it in their mind. Well, you know what? I will try that jolted cow. That's a flavor.
What is jolted cow?
Jolted cow is a vanilla base with coffee and caramel, and I believe it's peanuts in it.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Does it actually have caffeine from the coffee?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, we want people, part of making sure your employees understand is not just reprimanding. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
You have to praise as well. So you have to make sure that you have that in place. So how do we praise you? You do your job correctly, we're going to give you money, because we're also going to call you out, and we do promotions and things like that too. So they can actually, we have tumblers that we're selling right now, and if for every tumbler they sell, they get extra.
Oh, nice.
So they get a spiff. So it's one of those things where the goal is, if you sell one, that customer is going to now have just a sip tumbler, but you're going to get paid for it too. So we want people to understand that, we appreciate you, and we appreciate every single one of you, but you have to do what we ask the way we ask you to do it. And there's a method to that. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, that is difficult. John and I often talk about like how much give is there with those hourly team members because, like you said, they have so many different opportunities that they could go somewhere else. And our hope and our thesis has been that if we have a strong enough culture, then maybe we can have a little bit higher standards than elsewhere because hopefully they enjoy the environment and hopefully they know we care. And the verdict's not out on that, but so far, hopefully it seems like that's holding true. We've had really good retention so far.
And positive peer pressure helps too. If people see other people getting away with it, they'll try it as well.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you have, if people know that if I call in sick, I'm hurting my teammates and my teammates are important to me, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. It is crazy. Yeah.
It is. And it's a challenge too with, we had to come up with rules where, if you call in sick on a Friday or Saturday or Sunday, you have to have a doctor's note.
Oh yeah.
And the reason is not because we expect anyone to go to the doctor, because most of the time they're not sick. They're hungover. They don't want to come in because it's Friday or Saturday. Right. Our call outs on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are significantly less. And I don't think that's because somebody does not feeling well or they don't have a runny nose.
Yeah.
It's because they want to do something else. So, but you do have to have a little bit of slack there as well. I had an employee call in sick today. She's never sick. She's always on time. Yeah. She's absolutely amazing. You have to have a little bit of slack too. Are you going to write this person up because they didn't go to the doctor? You have to have a little bit of give and take there. And not all that has to be in public. But you do have to pick your battles, just like, as I mentioned earlier, with the parent-child relationship, you do have to pick your battles too.
It's such an interesting thing because it's an industry where it's like, I feel like the consumer's always like, well, just pay the employee more. Like, why are you paying us so little? Just pay him more. And like, there is a ceiling there. Like, you still have to operate the business. And I feel like everyone thinks that if you're in business and your doors are open, then you must be raking in the cash and everyone's the loser except for the person that owns the business. And that is not the case at all.
I was, it's funny you mentioned that. I was sitting out front, responding to a Facebook post in a group that I'm in, about something very similar to this. And that, the two biggest expenses you have as a business are, cost of goods and, well, generally cost of goods and payroll. Mm-hmm. And, your fixed expenses, you generally can't modify at all. Rent, electricity does vary depending on the month, and your gas for heating in Kansas anyway. Those do vary a little bit, but one will kind of offset the other depending on what month it is. But everything else kind of stays fixed. So you have employees and you have food costs. So you really have to try to balance those as much as you can. And people don't see that, every time, eggs go up a dollar a dozen, you can't raise the price on the menu.
Yeah.
And they may say, well, but $1 a dozen, what is that? It's less than 10 cents an egg. Well, that's true, but I'm just talking about the egg. Now there's the egg, and then there's the bacon that's gone up a little bit. There's this that's gone up a little bit. Everything goes up in price, and you can't necessarily adjust that. So, everybody thinks that there's all this extra money that's always flowing in, because when people see the big number, the gross, I feel like it's called gross for a reason, because it's gross that it's nowhere even near that. And people have to realize we are absolutely, positively the last one to get paid.
Yeah.
So all the employees get paid, all the vendors get paid, all of the products gets paid for, the landlord gets paid for, and then we're left. So when we're trying to squeeze another penny out of a nickel, it's because that's the last penny that we're getting. So it's a challenge. And in markets like we're in right now, the economic situation right now is vastly different than it was 2 years ago.
What was it 2 years ago? I mean, yeah, what was 2 years ago?
It's significantly the mark. So we really saw almost 2 years ago, we really saw the financial, the macro situation really take a downturn, February, March of 23. It literally, and it isn't across, if it was one of our businesses, I would say, okay, that's interesting to note. Maybe we're not marketing it correctly. What have we changed here? But it's legitimately all of the businesses have taken, some of them double-digit percentage drops.
Oh, wow.
In gross income. Yes. So it's month after month after month after month, and it's with no additional competition. It's not Amazon, it's a retail business. That's kind of things that you don't buy on Amazon, those kind of things. And when you see things like that going on, and it's not increased competition, it's from local or online, and you see it, and you talk to other business owners in the area, and they're seeing the same things, and they're a different type of business as well. It becomes a challenge. And when you have prices continue to increase, that causes your employees to come back to you and ask for more money. So again, now you're being squeezed two different ways.
Right.
Your prices continue to go up, your employees want more wages, and you have fewer customers. So it can become an ugly cycle. So you have to really be careful of every penny.
Yeah, that is the problem. You raise one, you have to raise the rest.
You do.
But also a lot of times as the business, like you just eat the cost. Like for example, when we opened up 9 weeks ago, it costs about $330 for 12 pounds of lobster. We have lobster options, our lobster brie omelet and our lobster hash. It is now over $500 for 12 pounds of lobster.
So it's gone up $200 in 9 weeks.
Yes.
And you can do nothing about it.
And our prices haven't changed in the menu.
That's right. And that's the thing that not only employees don't recognize, the consumers don't recognize that, but for the employees, it's hard too, because, they see how much they're making, what their gross tickets are a day. They see what their coworkers are a day, and they're seeing, well, you're making thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, but they don't understand, what everything, what the costs are. When I walked in today, I mentioned to you, the heating unit at at Let's Go Build, my Lego store, the heating unit went out today. So, you suddenly, most people don't realize, if you're not into commercial real estate, that if you're leasing a building, it's fully everything on you. It's not like a house it's like a house.
Yeah.
It's not like an apartment. So if your heat goes out at a commercial business, you have to pay to fix it, not the landlord.
Yeah.
So
we're triple net.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to wind up paying for that. So it's not like you just call the landlord and they come and fix it. It's not exactly that simple.
Yeah.
Of course, this doesn't happen when it's warm. It happens when it's cold. But there's all these added expenses that people don't necessarily think about because they've never dealt with them. So they don't know what they don't know. And so, it becomes, you start getting compressed on things, and it can be a big challenge.
Yeah. You've got your gross income, that big number you're talking about, all of the payroll, your cost of food. And then let's say that like you get to the bottom line, you actually made a little bit of money that year. Well, like you're saying, you have expenses that are going to come up in the future. You don't know what they are. They're miscellaneous expenses. So you got to retain a little bit of cash because something bad's probably going to happen for a rainy day. And then it's like, okay, if you still have a little bit left over, if people think that if they like your business, then you probably want to continue to grow your business. So then your reward for the business doing well is you have to invest in the next business, which is likely where that little bit of money that was left over is then going into the next one. So you yourself are not really ending up with much in your pocket at the end of the day in that scenario at all.
It's interesting too, because when you talk to people, it's like anything else. People can look extremely successful, and they can look successful in very different ways. It could be the clothes they wear, the purse they carry. Do they have an Armani suit on, or is it custom cut?
Yeah.
Or it could be that they drive a flashy car. There's all kinds of different things that will show people success. But I think what it is at the end of the day is success can be very different for different people. There are plenty of people in Wichita. If you've ever been over to Emerald Bay at 29th and West and 29th and Hoover, multi-million-dollar homes. Most of them are between $800,000 and $2 million. I do not live over there, by the way. I have no idea what most of those people do.
Yeah.
And I don't think most of them are business owners. So I think most people that have a good, they're a lawyer, a doctor, they're a corporate person at Coke or Cargill, and they're married, and obviously married to someone who's doing well as themselves. And they have a great life. But just because you're in the public eye doesn't mean you're, rolling in the cash, because just like you said, you have to save things back for a rainy day. We had no idea that COVID was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Nobody did. I mean, so if, and there wasn't, government money just immediately available. And there were many businesses, they just went out. They didn't have enough money to pay the first couple of months of rent, or like the ice cream store, I didn't qualify for anything because I wasn't open when COVID started. So you didn't qualify for anything. And then the candy store had only been open 6 months. So it's very, very little because it was based on payroll.
Yeah.
So, and as I mentioned earlier, the candy store runs on one person. So there was hardly any payroll anyway.
Yeah.
So you always have to be prepared. I always say, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. It'll probably be somewhere in between.
Yeah. That's what my dad always says.
Yeah.
It's got to be a Midwestern dad thing.
I think it is. But it's just good overall in life. But it's never as bad as I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
And man, I can think it's bad sometimes. You should see me looking at numbers today on Small Business Saturday. Last thing I thought was going to happen was going to have a gas leak on the furnace at one of the stores. But you really never know what's going to happen. It's just always. It's exciting, I guess, in some ways.
Yeah.
But it definitely keeps me on my toes.
Yeah. I feel like we're kind of ragging on business a little bit. I will say it is also one of the most rewarding things. Like, even though you don't potentially end up with much money at the end of the day in your pocket and you're not guaranteed success, like for John and myself specifically, the idea that we have some sort of control over charting our path, like the idea that we get to plan for a future that could potentially happen, not guaranteed, but to be in control of that and not just taking someone else's direction and working towards something that they wanted, but to actually get to have the privilege to plan that for yourself has been so rewarding and exciting.
Yeah, I worked in education and Fortune 500 IT for 20 years. And when COVID happened, there were some changes that were made there. And I started to decide I finally just want to do this and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't do anything else. October of this year was 3 years that this is all I've done. So It's only been 3 years since I've just done this. I was able to run 3 stores for almost 3 years and work full time.
Crazy.
Yeah, I had 2 of the stores in 2019, and that year I traveled 195 days that year.
Jeez.
So I wasn't even in town. But I wouldn't ever go back. So I mean, and some of you need to really listen to this. I don't ever have to get on a Zoom call ever again if I don't want to. That's probably worth the price of admission right there.
Yeah.
But it's really important that you understand that, people think, oh, you're the CEO. It's great. You're the guy that's in charge. You're a co-owner. That's amazing. That means I'm in the bathroom wiping down the toilet because we're busy and I happen to be in there and the toilet's a mess. So I've got to wipe it down.
Yeah.
So you're the CEO, but you're also the janitor. You're the bus boy. You're literally the one who's out sweeping the cigarette butt that got thrown, in the parking lot because it's on your sidewalk. You get to do all of that too. So you may get the quote unquote glory, but you get everything else too. And that's the thing that people don't see.
Yeah. I was going to say, you mentioned never having to hop on a Zoom call. And I was going to say, well, Derek, how many hours a week do you think you're working? What's the trade-off here?
Yeah, that's true. There is the saying that, a lot of entrepreneurs will say that I'd rather work, 80 hours a week for myself than 40 hours a week for somebody else. And I always think, wow, 80 hours. How does anybody work that little? I think there is a balance. I'm not always good at it. This is probably, quite honestly, the longest I haven't looked at my phone in 3 days.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, yeah, my girlfriend would be thrilled if she was here to get this much time with me without looking at it. Probably have 2 stores on fire right now. But it is hard. Yeah. It is hard. And that's when you have multiple stores, you have to learn to delegate. But you also, part of it is you have to get your employees to learn to be able to make decisions.
Yeah.
I always tell them, if it's not going to cost the company a lot of money and it's going to make the customer happy, then do it.
Yeah.
If a customer says they ordered something and it's an extra drink and it's not on their order, and they're starting to throw a fit about it or something, just give them the drink.
Right.
Now we need to make sure that's kind of thing's not happening all the time, but at the same time, what's going to be the negative repercussions by this? And going back to what your question was, I think it comes down to, the amount of work. I think it comes down to what are you actually doing and are you enjoying it? While I'm sitting, today's Saturday, I'm sitting down by the fireplace in my house, got my laptop out. I'm going through numbers. It's not stressful to me, really. It's more intriguing. I'm interested in what people are buying and why they're buying it. And I moved 3 or 4 things around this morning in that store and they all sold out. And now I'm thinking, well, what, because they were on a little bit higher shelf, and
Yeah.
then I'm thinking, okay, so it was too high on the shelf. So maybe I need to move a few other things that are slow movers down. But I started thinking like that because it's always, what can I do differently that's going to move the needle?
Yeah. If you're not growing, you're dying.
If you're not growing, you're dying. That is absolutely 100% true.
So I was going to ask you, how do you decompress, and do you see the value in finding time to do that?
I absolutely do. I think, I used to partake in a few too many cigars, and I still do occasionally. I do. It's kind of one thing that allows me to focus for a couple of hours if it's a good smoke. Not so much in the winter time. I do like to do a little bit of travel still, but when I do travel, I'm not much adventurous. I'm not very adventurous anymore. I'm more of, I want to go sit by a pool somewhere and just want it to be warm and just shut off. Yeah, I really do. I think one of the things that I do enjoy if I'm in Wichita, which is where I am most of the time, I don't travel too much anymore. I like to eat out. I like to eat out a lot. And when I do, sometimes if I'm with my girlfriend or even with not, I'll sit at the bar, and it allows me to kind of to decompress a little bit because I'm not focused on really anything. And if I do have an opportunity, for example, in the summer, I'll sit somewhere where there's a beautiful patio, like Chester's.
Yeah.
They have an amazing happy hour, by the way. I can sit out there and look at the lake, and I can just really decompress. Don't even spend a lot of money, have an appetizer or something like that, and just relax.
Yeah.
And so I'm really good at finding a good patio like Newport Grill as well, where I can enjoy the view. And I think that's one of the main ways that I decompress. And I will admit, this time of year, probably shouldn't admit this too many times, I do like Hallmark Christmas movies. No,
Derek, I was hoping you weren't going there.
I do. I don't watch them any other time of the year, but I think the reason that I like them, I think, is, and they got a great storyline. It's the same one every time. I think the reason it's decompressing is because I really don't have to think about what's going on.
It's predictable.
It's the same story. There's a problem. She's from the big city. He's a small town farmer.
Sometimes it's flipped.
They dated. That's right. They dated in high school. They come back together. Well, it's terrible. They kiss at the end. It's weird. But I don't have to. It's happy. It's the holidays.
Yeah.
The decorations are amazing. But yeah, I know it's completely ridiculous. My girlfriend agrees. It's completely ridiculous, but it's something where you don't have to think.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely an overthinker about just about everything. So if I can put myself in a situation where I'm looking at a beautiful lake, or I'm watching a sappy, cheesy movie, I'm not overthinking it. I'm just kind of watching it, and it kind of lets my brain kind of relax a little bit.
Do you see the benefit in being an overthinker?
Yes and no. I think you have to be willing to not get bogged down and being unable to make the decision. You can't get an analysis paralysis.
Right.
You absolutely have to, figure out what's the problem. What are the possible solutions? If you do have a co-owner or somebody that you can trust, run it by them, and then the decision needs to be made. If it needs to be made right away, it needs to be made immediately. There are absolutely too many people that will tell you everything is a great idea, and that's bad to have those people around you,
right?
Because every idea is not good. It's just like with relationships. If you tell somebody you're having relationship trouble, and they'll say she's not worth it or he's not worth it, and life's too short, and it's, you deserve better. There's not many people that are going to say, have you gone to therapy?
Yeah.
Have you worked? What are you doing to work it out? Because that's pushing back. Same thing is true in business. A lot of people don't want to tell you that your dream is just your dream and nobody else cares.
Your baby's ugly.
Your baby is ugly. And they're not. And not most people. So you have to be careful who you take advice from, but at the same time, you need to try to be open, because there's a lot of people that will tell you a lot of things that are absolutely true, but you also have to be willing to take a step back and look at what your idea is and say, does this really make sense? Or am I going to be able to make money doing this?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, business is in business for one reason and one reason only, and that's to make money.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're not good to your employees. It does not mean you don't give back to the community. It does not mean that you don't do great things. But if you don't make money, you can't do any of those things.
Yeah. I like how binary it is. It's 0 or it's 1. It's yes or it's no. It's immediate feedback from the market.
It is. And then if you're not making a lot of money, then it becomes, do I want to put this much time and effort into this and continue to do it?
Yeah.
So, and then there's times when those decisions have to be made. If you're renting real estate, leasing real estate, those conversations have to happen where it's like, all right, we're almost at that 5-year point. Do we want to sign another lease and do this for another 5 years, or do we want to move on?
Yeah. And the opportunity cost, if you do decide to move on, or if you don't move on, like there's always alternatives. And I feel like you can get stuck in a box and it's like, I either have this or I have nothing. And it's like, well, look a little bit further to the right. There's 100 other opportunities.
That's right. We all get our own blinders on, and we can all be challenged by our own situations. And we have to remember that, just because one thing doesn't work out doesn't mean something else isn't. If you look at Richard Branson, for an example, he had the Virgin Megastores, which are these beautiful, amazing record and CD and DVD stores, and they're all closed. He failed.
Yeah.
But he's got many other successful businesses. So just because you do something extremely well, and then you do something that completely fails, doesn't mean that it's the end. Mm-hmm. And even if you're small and you have one thing that fails, I've had several businesses that either didn't do well or that I closed. And I learned more from those than I did anything else, because success breeds ego. Mm-hmm. Failure makes you very much step back and have to look at what I did wrong and how could I do it better, and what did I do that I shouldn't have done. So I think you have to look at every situation, especially failure, as a learning experience, and pick yourself up and go do it again.
Do you spend much time analyzing yourself? Like, are you letting your ego get in the way, or are you overthinking this decision? Like, do you reflect upon yourself a lot or no?
I do spend a little bit of time. I'm one of those people that is definitely, I'm harder on myself than anybody else is. I don't necessarily let that out. I'm not posting it on Facebook. I'm too busy posting all kinds of other worthless information on Facebook. But I'm definitely extremely hard on myself. I look at, was it the right move to open up 4 businesses in a year? And the answer is no. But we're where we are, and we're doing fine. But am I able to put the attention into all the businesses that I would really like to do? Because 4 businesses ago, or 4 locations ago, I had the same staff as far as management. So now it's busier, and I'm running my director of operations a little ragged, and myself as well. So I think you have to be self-critical of what you're doing and how you're doing it, and at the same time you have to be self-critical, but only because you're looking to improve yourself. Don't beat yourself down, but you have to be looking at, okay, I did this and it was wrong, or I made this decision and it was wrong. What am I going to do to ensure that I don't do that again in that same way? Mm-hmm. And that can go for everything, is for talking to your employees, and how you talk to them, to making a decision based on flawed information, but you wanted to believe that flawed information, because when we get it in our heads that we want something, that can be really dangerous, especially when you can actually do it. And that goes back to, sometimes you have to realize your own baby's ugly.
Yeah.
And that's hard sometimes. And because when you get in a position where you have a lot of businesses, or a few businesses, ego can creep in there. Well, I'm doing well at all of these. I have the golden touch.
Yeah.
And trust me,
I'll just make it work.
You don't have the golden touch unless you just have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because then you can just throw it at anything that's failing and no one will know.
Yeah. That bias element's hard, because like when you have your own personal ambition of, I want to grow this, or I want to scale this, or I want to say I have X, Y, or Z, like you have that attachment to whatever that outcome is, then you go into it already wanting to make it work, rather than just actually underwriting it and saying objectively, is this going to work?
And that's absolutely true. Because just because you want it to work does not mean it's going to. And it can be terribly challenging trying to ensure that what you're going to do is going to work, because there are so many things that, we can't control. I talked about, the macroeconomic situation, but the weather.
Yeah.
So last year on this day, Small Business Saturday, was Snowmageddon. There was snow, and it was one of our worst sales days ever for small businesses. But there's no way you can control that.
Right.
Now, the lucky thing was it was a rare once every 4-year occurrence where there were 5 Saturdays between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So that happens every 5 years, 4 or 5 years, maybe 5 years. So we still had 4 Saturdays. So that was a plus. But, you look at things like that because, businesses like the arcade are going to be busier when it's really hot or when it's really cold because you can't do anything outside.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to accept that there are going to be times where business is going to be slower than you expected, and you have to be prepared for that financially.
Yeah, that seasonality thing is something John and I are still trying to figure out. I think we even asked you, like, what do you typically see in the holiday season? Because we're not really too sure if we're busy in the fall and not in the winter and spring, or if all three of those are busy and the summer's not busy. We're still trying to figure out what our 4 seasons look like.
And it's going to be different at different businesses too, in different regions. So and based on where you're at, in the city. So you're going to be very different than one in Florida or one in Kansas City, but there is going to be some seasonality to it too. But at the same time, you're going to see, from our expectations, from what we've seen is, January and February typically are slower months.
Mm-hmm.
Just, everyone goes out over the holidays and spends all kind of money, on eating out and dinners and breakfast with family and all those kind of things. And then everybody pulls back from as much food, partially because they're going to the gym, for 3 weeks, maybe if they're lucky. I just don't go. I'm not going to lie to myself. I don't do that. I don't lie to myself. But you do see that seasonality, and we certainly see it in a lot of our businesses around second half of August, September, October. Back to school, you have fall sports.
Mm-hmm.
The weather starts getting cool again, so people can do things outside. So it really starts to make changes. But the one thing I don't have that you do is I don't have a full service restaurant. So I'm probably not, and I'm not going to. So I'm probably not going to have the insight. And that's the thing too, is that even though all my businesses many of them are very similar, at the same time, they're still very different. And having something like a restaurant like you have, it's still going to have a seasonality that I'm not prepared for or not used to. And I'll be interested to see what it is.
Yeah, I'm also interested.
Yeah.
Derek, as we start to wrap up, what does your future growth look like? Have you kind of charted that? Do you have new concepts, more openings of the same, or are you just kind of reflecting and observing right now?
Absolutely reflecting and observing. I think it's time to look at, and that's what I mentioned earlier, is that, we kind of put together too many different promos this year and ran too many things at different times. And we need to kind of focus on, really what makes sense, because if you're going to have as many different concepts as I have, you need to make sure that you're giving them your full attention and ensuring that you're able to grow each of those, even if it's just a little bit. And, I hate to say it because it sounds ridiculous, but again, working smarter, not harder. So what can we do to move the needle as much as we possibly can with as little effort as possible? It's kind of like using, a lever instead of trying to lift it on your own. That lever is going to give you more leverage than you're going to get by lifting it yourself. And that's what you kind of have to do in business with your marketing and with your strategy and with your plans. I can't imagine opening up another concept. But I think I said that 2 or 3 concepts ago. I actually said I would never open another retail store before I opened the arcade. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And that was a long time ago. So here we are. So you never know. You never know.
Could be something in the works.
It could, well, not right now, but you never know.
Tomorrow you'll have an idea.
Don't let me go on vacation. That's where things tend to,
right?
I tend to wander into places.
Yeah, right. I want to give you a shout out, Derek. We were like 2 or 3 weeks into business. We ran out of syrup, and who's going to have soda syrup in town? Derek from Just a Sip. You came in very clutch. I think it was Coca-Cola you brought us, and that was huge. Thank you for bringing that in.
Oh, not a problem at all. It's one of those things you never really recognize all the little things until you don't have it.
Yeah. It's just funny. It's like, well, who do I know in town that has 3 soda shops? Oh, wait, there actually is someone.
Yeah, it is. It's, when you run out of something that obviously we tend to have a extra soda syrup because that's one of our main things that's necessary, but you don't recognize how many people order a Coke at a breakfast lunch restaurant until you don't have Coke.
Yeah.
And, with serving cocktails as well, people order a Jack and Coke or, a rum and Coke.
Yeah.
And when you don't have Coke, it suddenly changes a dynamic and a selling point, and that's a high margin item.
Yeah.
So when you don't have it, it definitely affects sales.
Yeah. We sell a lot of Powerade. Actually, I say sell. I think it's the employees. I don't see anyone out here drinking. I think the employees are drinking all of our Powerade.
It's very possible. That keeps them going, keeps them properly hydrated in the hot kitchen.
I will say they're picking that over soda, which is probably good.
That's probably a good thing.
Derek, where can people find you online if they want to reach out, connect, learn more?
The best place to find us is at ScionCapitalPartners.com. That's SCION, ScionCapitalPartners.com.
Nice. You can find me at Jacob O'Connor on Instagram. The podcast is at Real Period Conversations. And then if you guys have any guest suggestions, feel free to reach out and DM those accounts as well. Derek, looking back at this really cool journey you've been on, what advice would you offer to your 23-year-old self?
Wow, that's a hard one. I think it has to be education is important. I didn't get my bachelor's till I was 37.
Oh, really?
And we can dig into that later. But education is important because you want to, ensure that you are well-rounded and that you have a good foothold to get started with. But I also think you have to take that first step. If you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you haven't done anything with it, you're not going anywhere. I was able to sit for an hour with Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari, and just pick his brain. And, he said, everyone has the greatest ideas in the shower. It's what you do when you get out of the shower that really makes the difference. And I think that's what it would be. If you have an idea, try to do something with it. Make a difference.
I love it. Thanks for coming on, Derek.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.